you create a film and you know that you would take it, it would be a film festival exclusive. So you only take it to film festivals. That's your vision. But that's as far as you can think. You post it or you put it or you submit it and it takes care of itself. As you know, art is pretty subjective. Depends on the person, depends on the experiences that he might feel in his life, depends on his idea of what art actually is. You usually either have the budget in the beginning, you know what's your budget, you need to make a film with this amount of money, or you break down the script and you remove the cost of everything and you create like a sheet for everything that you might need with a total. Find investors, they invest into the project, expecting the film to do well in like film festivals, or if you're gonna make it to the cinema.
You know, I just lowered the temperature, and you know what else I like lowered? Everything that I pay for. That's why Secure My Scholarship, our sponsor for this video, is offering up to 50% scholarship on your next university degree. So head down to bit.ly/paylessfees. That is bit.ly/paylessfees and get up to 50% scholarship, application fee waivers, and reimbursements on your IELTS and TOEFL in universities across US, UAE, and UK. So what are you waiting for?
Hi everybody, welcome to the Diaries. Today we have an amazing personality with us. He's a local filmmaker and his name is Nour. Hi Nour, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, how are you?
I'm good as well. Nour, such an interesting personality being in the film and arts of it all. What is it like? Give us a little brief about you.
About me?
Yeah.
So basically, long story short, I am a filmmaker. I was born in Egypt, lived there for a while, and moved to Dubai approximately, I think, in 2015.
Okay.
I finished my studies, filmmaking productions, and done a few short films, entered a few festivals. The creative life has always been around me. My mother's an artist. My father was a writer. So I couldn't just escape it very easily. So I think you could say it's a part embedded in me. I always tell people that I was born between the camera and the canvas. The first smell I ever smelled in my life was actually oil painting.
Okay.
Do you believe me if I told you that?
No.
Yeah, good.
Which, speaking of your mother, right?
Yes.
We are in her beautiful studio today, filled with artwork by her. Just tell us a little bit about what is it about art that inspires you and your family, right? It's not just you, but your father, your mother, and I hear your grandfather as well, right? So it's been in the family. What is it like being in the art world in Egypt and in UAE?
Well, I mean...
Let's take a walk.
Yeah, sure. So basically, I don't know how someone becomes an artist or creates that mentality. However, as I said, art has been a part of our life. In my grandfather's case, he was an actor, okay? And as an actor, you have to fall in love with becoming someone else. And I never met him. He died before I came to existence. However, I've heard so much about him, and I'm lucky enough to have my grandfather on the TV constantly and seeing his movies and all that. I do not know much about him in terms of why he became an actor exactly, but as a director, as someone who has dealt with actors, many actors, I do believe that you have to fall in love with becoming something else. You have to want to tell a story, become a figure somehow. And my mother has always been interested in art. As far as I remember, I mean, she did sculpting, oil painting, porcelain art, oil, watercoloring even. She has a knack for it, really.
Okay.
And my father was a writer. He was actually the best storyteller I've ever met in my life.
Okay.
I distinctly remember him telling me stories about either work that he has been doing or movies that he's thinking about, and that's where it goes to me, because I can only speak about myself, really.
Correct, yeah.
So after I heard about what my father used to say about film and his passion about storytelling, I was inspired by that. I wanted to be like my father in terms of how he says a story, or how he tells a story, or how he portrays a character, or how he puts these pieces together. And that's how it started. I heard my father telling stories. I wanted to tell stories just like him. I remember the first film I've ever made in my life. I think I was 12 years old, 11 years old. So I went on my Windows XP, and there was this application. It was called Movie Maker.
Yes.
So, and the only stock I had was the Windows XP wallpaper. You know, the mountain, the green mountain?
Yeah.
And it had many varieties. So I put them all together in a way which is apocalyptic, you could say, from it going to brighter all the way until darker. And with some dramatic music, and I made my first film. I remember burning it on a CD, putting it in front of my father's table, and I told him to take a look at it. And he took a look at it, and he was very proud of me.
Okay.
I remember him telling me that I can go around telling people that my son is a filmmaker now. So yeah, I guess that's where it started.
Now, you've been since 12, you've had a passion for it. And how old are you now?
I'm turning 26 tomorrow.
26 tomorrow, right? Happy birthday.
Thank you.
But here's the thing, right? 12 to 26, you've kind of been passionate about this.
Yes.
And we live in a world where everything's, commercial.
Yes.
Everything's about money. How
Yes.
much money can this
Yes.
turn? How much money can this do? How do you see yourself and future filmmakers approach an environment where everything's all about commercials, how much money it's making, how do you cover the budget and all these things? And where do you see yourself being there?
I would say put your creativity wherever you work. So as a creative individual, or I like to think of myself as a creative individual, and anyone who has the knack for it, I would say that bring your creativity with you wherever you go. Whether you're working as a salesman, whether you're working, I don't know, as a guest services, call center, put your creativity in it. And that's, I mean, it's almost like a coping thing.
Okay.
Because if you're a creative person in a corporate environment, you can feel trapped very easily, you can feel trapped very quickly.
Yeah.
So I think, or at least what works for me is that I'll try to bring a little bit of me wherever I go. Not the full me, not the filmmaker me, but just a little bit is enough to
Show the world that this is-
Precisely,
yeah.
precisely. Because at the end of the day, as a content, or if you're a content creator, if you're a filmmaker, you want to bring that out because we all want to project what's inside of us.
Correct.
So I would say use your creativity wherever you are. In the end of the day, it's about making that money, putting food on the table. So cannot really complain. Finding a job is a very difficult thing sometimes for some people. So if you're lucky enough to have a job, however you're a creative person, and you might find that a bit conflicting, I would say bring your creativity with you. And that works for me.
And we're also seeing these new things in the environment, right? Like AI, generative AI. It's creating videos now. It's pretty shit, but it's creating videos now. The images are pretty good. Scripting, like, ChatGPT, you put a prompt, scripts are coming out. In this environment, do you feel like, there are like these corporate overlords making sure that the creativity is there and everything's, standard, boilerplate things?
Well, I do believe that creativity is not the same as it was. I do believe that it has become a bit more commercialized, you could say. Overlords and people in control and people in power and all that, I'm not really sure. I mean, I haven't seen any. But from what I can see, we live in a consumer-based society. So whatever people like to consume, whatever sells, that's what they focus on. And in terms of artistic or creative thinking, unfortunately in our current life or current world, it's not so rewarding to be creative. But it is rewarding to be someone who follows the rules, someone who does his job, listens to his manager, does all that. A creative person always likes to break the rules. He likes to explore different ideas, tries to find the hidden meaning behind certain aspects of existence. I do believe that this is unfortunately not rewarded within our current society. AI is getting better, actually. And it's helping some people explore different things. I myself, I've dabbled a little bit in AI. I wouldn't say I'm a professional or anything. It's not very difficult. It's very user-friendly as well. So I can see where the thinking is going. I can see why people find it very attractive. You can make a video without shooting any footage.
Correct.
I mean, that's huge. Is it there? Absolutely not. Absolutely. Will it ever be there? I do believe yes. I do believe that it's rapidly getting better. And I do believe that at some point, not AI specifically, the thing that we see right now, but I do believe it will morph into something that will be an industry standard at some point. Because how weird was it? TVs back.
Correct. Yeah.
When it first came out.
I can't say that I was born with it.
I know. But think about the people before us, our ancestors, when they first saw that TV. I'm pretty sure they were like, oh, this is gonna. What is that? It's not like a theater because theaters were more popular. They had their their power back then. And to see that TV, I'm pretty sure they underestimated it. And at some point, TV was the thing, but now TV is nothing. Now it's all on your phone.
Yeah, I remember my mother, right? Like when she was in India, they used to be like, they weren't very well off. So there used to be one home on the entire area where they used to have that small TV and they would gather around, watch movies. They would like rent out cassettes and stuff. And my mother explained it as like, it was such a bonding moment with your cousins, with your friends, with your relatives. That feeling is no longer there, right? Because everything's on your phone, you're on the corner, sitting and watching your thing, your sister's watching another thing, right? If you are making content or movies or art for individuals rather than experience, how does it change filmmaking? Or do you still believe that collective enjoyment of film is still like existent?
I mean, absolutely, or cinema would be dead. In the end of the day, the experience of going to the cinema is still a collective thing. No one likes to go to the cinema alone, really.
Correct.
Or at least, I don't think I found anyone other than me that enjoys doing that. But in terms of if I'm targeting an individual when it comes to my content creation, first of all, I would pick my audience. Who am I targeting with this message? And how this message benefit them? And then we move on to the more complex ideas of how to create it and why and with what and for whom, all that. But yes, I do believe that cinema, or at least visual medium, can still be enjoyed as a collective. Because think about it, when you see a nice film, or when you see even a nice skit on your phone, don't you immediately share it to your friend?
We do.
So you could still say that it's a collective thing. You know what I mean? I don't think anything in the world is individual. In the end of the day, we are a part of a society. We're a part of a whole. I never saw anything being done by just one human being. Or I've never seen a product or a art or a film made for just an individual mindset. Usually it targets
large
couple. Yeah,
subset.
exactly. Absolutely.
So as a filmmaker, your mother's a painter, your dad's a writer, and I've just heard about your cousin who's also a painter, right?
Yeah.
As an artist, how do you consider this piece of artwork as a success? What is your criteria for success?
In that case, I'm only allowed to speak about my opinion. In that case, as you know, art is pretty subjective. Depends on the person, depends on the experiences that he went through in his life. Depends on his idea of what art actually is. For me, as Nour, art is a window to a whole other possibility, a whole other world, a whole different perspective. Because in the end of the day, it can all be boiled down to we are a projection of our perspectives. We project our perspective wherever we go. And as an artist, if I'm able to see a piece of art and from it understand a little bit about this artist's perspective on life, because we all see the world differently, correct? And if I'm able to have that window where I could see almost beyond him or behind him in a way, and to see his perspective on life and how he sees things and what he thinks about it, I do believe this is art. Another form of art, in terms of filmmaking, for example, one of the things I believe are is equally important as to know the other person's perspective is the message. What are you trying to say with that piece of art? Is it a message about peace and love? Is it a statement? Is it a reflection of the world? Is it a lesson? What is it exactly? What are you trying to teach me? That's what I always look for in a film, for example. What are you trying to teach me? What did I learn? I always enjoy movies that teach me something. You know what I mean? That's my idea.
Because art is so subjective, right? Like how you value art is very different from how I value art.
Absolutely.
And does this not create a problem when you try to commercialize it? Now, commercial, even if you're an artist and everything, commercials kind of play a role in art, right? Right? At the end of the day, again, as you mentioned earlier, you have to put food on the table, right? So where do you see the disconnect between people valuing art for the money it is? So let's say we see a painting of Mona Lisa is worth X amount of dollars, and we see this painting worth another Y amount of dollars. Even though art is subjective, a pricing for a piece of art is pretty stable. Where do you see the disconnect in that environment?
So as far as I know, in terms of artwork specifically, it depends on the painter really, the method that he used. I believe that there is a committee that looks at the style, it looks at the colors that were used, the period of time it took, what was the artist going through at that time, who was he, what did he work on, did he create anything new, did he try any new techniques, did he mix and match. So it really boils down to really the artist in the end of the day, because artwork, as we said, it's subjective, it could be anything, it could be however, in the end of the day, from what I see in the art world, specifically paintings, it depends on the artist. Who is he and what did he do and what's his story, and usually for some reason it's always after they die, it's always after they perish that the art really comes to value. But is the value, you have to ask yourself a question, is the value in the money or is the value in the art piece itself?
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, but because I look at things like this, right? For example, you're just telling about your cousin's artwork, you know, how much shadows go in. It's a 12-year-old who painted this. There's so much creativity goes in, and you see that this is probably less valued than some abstract art, you know, one line or a banana taped to a canvas.
Absolutely.
And it's significantly worth more, right? Even though it doesn't take nearly as much as effort, it doesn't take as much as duration, it doesn't even take as much work. Right? So why do you think that something like a banana tape to a canvas could be worth more than the intricate detail and the eyes and the shadows of all this artwork being undervalued compared to that?
I have no idea. I mean, I know what example you're speaking about. And I absolutely have no idea why, as you said, they call it abstract. But really, I don't think that this is abstract. I don't believe that it's an art piece. I do believe that it's nothing. It's nothing. It's a banana taped on a canvas. That's me as Nour. Again, at the end of the day, I can only speak on my behalf. In my perspective, through my eyes, processed through my brain, this is not art. And the people who call that art, in my humble opinion, don't know what art actually is. But again, this is only my opinion.
A good example of this is also like how we see movies, right? Because film is your expertise. We see, you know, your standard Marvel movies, right?
Absolutely.
Right? Everything's shot in the same way. The story of every fifth movie is the same, with just different characters. They go through the same character life cycle. Everything's very similar. It's short, it's bland, the colors are really terrible. Versus something that is very artistic. You know, we see movies like, let's take a franchise movie for that sample, right? We look at a movie like Dune, for example, the new Dune movie, right? So much creativity, how the character is portrayed, how the life journey of that character is portrayed. There is this one scene in Dune where he's riding the sandworm, and like you can feel, like if you're in an IMAX theater, you can feel that, you know, what the person is feeling through with the sound and everything. You feel that claustrophobic feeling that Paul feels, right? We see that there are very little movies like that, even if it's a franchise movie, very little in quantity. There are less movies doing creative work versus something that is standard. Why do you feel like those standard movies are more in number and these creative films are significantly lower in number?
Okay. So let's go back a little bit. All right. You started with the example of Marvel movies. Unfortunately, Marvel films specifically are very commercialized. So they follow, I mean, again, what works sells, or what sells works. People like comic books, they like superheroes. I think a psychologist, I don't remember who it was exactly, that said that superheroes are our current modern life Greek mythology. You know how there was Zeus and Apollos and all these people. Now they Superman, Batman, and so on and so forth. It resonates, but you need to know that there's a difference here. There's a difference between film, cinema, and movies. Movies are what you go and see in the cinema. Okay, like Marvel, in my opinion, Dune. Okay. But there are also films.
Yeah.
There's cinema. You know what I mean? I'm talking about more of where there are no rules. Like let's talk about the director for Dune. I don't really remember his name. Yes. So one of my favorite movies for him is actually a movie called Enemy. Okay, and if you saw that film, you will see something completely different than Dune. In the end of the day, Dune is a good book, turned into a fairly successful film, shot and directed by an incredible director. Okay, but look at his previous cinema work. Okay, look at his Enemy, or there's this Prisoners, this other film, brilliant film. Marvel films or superhero movies, I mean, at the end of the day, they have a criteria, you could say, because there's toys connected to it, there are comic books connected to it, so it branches out. It's not just about the film.
Correct.
You know what I mean? And I think that's what makes the difference between cinema and a movie. Is the movie connected to anything other than the story? Is it connected to toys and commercial consumer goods, or is it a standalone story telling you a specific message about a very specific topic portrayed in a very specific way?
There's also this case, right? Like Denis Villeneuve, the director, he created very cinematic films, but eventually ended up making a franchise movie, right? You see a lot of directors going there, right? They make beautiful films, then eventually they all make a Marvel movie, right? If given that choice, you are a filmmaker, but if you were given the chance to make a Marvel movie, would you do it?
I don't think so, honestly. I mean, I can do it for the money. I can do it maybe because I like the source material. Maybe. I mean, I'm not really a comic book individual. Maybe, yeah, but mostly it would be because it pays. But if I want to make a cinema film or a traditional film, and as an art piece, yeah, I would go in a very different direction.
Have you seen the Batman movie, the one with Matt Reeves?
Yes.
Yes. So that is a movie, I would say it's beautifully shot. It's beautiful to look at. Like, I have a low standard, I'm not a film guy. Okay. Right? If given the chance to do something like that, would you still say no to it? Let's forget about the money. Let's take it from an artistic angle.
Okay. As an artist? No.
No, why not?
No. It doesn't embody what I, as an artist, stand for, honestly. Okay. I love Batman. Do I think I can tell a good Batman story? Maybe. But the direction that I see Batman as a character, as a world, as a story, as all that, I see it very differently than someone who enjoys the Matt Reeves film or the Christopher Nolan film sees it. Comic books did a very good job of that. There's this Batman comic book, it's called, if I remember, Asylum.
Okay, Arkham Asylum.
No, not Arkham Asylum. There's another one, I think it's only called Asylum.
Okay.
It's drawn with oil painting. And the panels are just phenomenal. Each panel can just be its own standalone painting, honestly. I can go in that direction, okay? But me as Nour, would I just go and be like, I want to make a Batman film or I want to make a comic book film? Would that come naturally? No, that's not the kind of filmmaker I am, or at least I try to be.
So for you, is it fair to say that you would put your personal value, the character, and how it translates your character over the monetary and the financials of it all?
It depends on what I want to say. In the end of the day, I use films as an art form to tell something about myself. That's, I think, how artists work. The real artists, they don't speak a lot. They have things that they don't talk about. And they would very much prefer to have it said through a visual medium like film or paintings or music or any of that. That's where I find myself at.
All right, that's fair. There is also this scenario, right? Like, you are an aspiring filmmaker, you are a filmmaker, right? You have this immense passion for it. What has your journey been like? Being in Egypt, you've seen Egypt, you've seen the environment in the UAE. What is the environment in UAE and Egypt like?
Very different, very different. So the best way I can put it is the conflict. In Egypt, it's very vast, very big, a lot of people. More people means more conflict because more people interact. You see that a lot in Egypt. And Egypt, as a society, it's a very old society, very ancient almost, like the pharaohs and all that. So there are reiterations and things that changed over the years that inspire the artists, or inspires history, or so on and so forth. Dubai is fairly new. Dubai is extremely advanced, extremely safe. When was the last time you saw a fight on the street?
No.
I've never seen it. That's huge. And as a filmmaker, I always look for the conflict in the stories. Because how would I get you to watch my movie?
Correct.
I need to tell you a story. I need to grip you with a story. I need to tell you that there's a conflict, that character A wants something from character B, and character B is not willing to give it up. Here's where the story lies. Okay, what do they do? What does character A do to get that? And how does character B react to that? You see? But if you have a fairly quiet society, fairly organized, not much problems.
There's not enough conflict to.
There is, but it's not there on the surface. You really need to go deep to find it, or it's not available to you wherever you go. And that could be difficult for filmmakers here in Dubai. The lack of conflict, the lack of stories here can sometimes be. I mean, it depends where you look, what type of filmmaker you want. I write stories about people, and usually that means I have to write conflict. My surroundings inspire me at the end of the day. So in Egypt, it's very easy for me to know of a conflict of people, or a conflicted story about a son that, let's say, hates his father, for example. And why does he hate his father? And what did his father do? And how did the family work around that? And what was the outcome? And how did they? You see, there's a branching story to it. While here, I mean, thank God, everything is provided. Everything is safe. Everything is up to standards. You cannot really complain about anything. There is no conflict. But
there's not a lot of commentary to be made in a society which is at a grasp, it's kind of perfect, right? Like everything's beautiful, everything's just.
Look at it that way. If I was born in Dubai, I would have probably been a very different filmmaker than the one I am right now. Maybe because I was raised in Egypt, and I saw Egyptian society, and I saw how they deal with one another, and I saw the stories. Maybe that shaped my view. So going from this to Dubai, maybe it's a consequence of me, or my upbringing, but I'm used to this type of storytelling. Maybe if I was here, I would have liked to write stories about cars, or businessmen, or high corporate profile people, or how like Wall Street stories, and crypto, and stock market, and business oriented stories. Maybe I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, because I was raised in Egypt, I see it very differently, or maybe it's difficult for me to make that transition as an artist. But maybe it's not the same for everyone else.
A good piece of information to know from you is that you've been filmmaker in the UAE, and filmmaking is not a cheap art. It's a very expensive process. There's a lot of sets, cameras, lights, and so many more things that I can't even imagine. How do you budget for it, and how do you get money for it? What is that process like?
Well, in terms of setting the budget for the film, you usually either have the budget in the beginning, you know what's your budget, well, you need to make a film with this amount of money, or you break down the script and you remove the cost of everything and you create like a sheet, a budget sheet for everything that you might need with a total, to find investors. They invest into the project, expecting the film to do well in like film festivals, or if you're going to make it to the cinema, or so on and so forth. So from after you break down the budget, you shoot the film, you're done with the shoot, then you move to distribution. Distributing a film can be quite tricky because it works more with connections. You need to know a good film distributor with many connections, especially if you want to screen it in cinemas or big festivals, Cannes, so on and so forth. And then maybe you get a buyer, someone who's interested. Maybe Netflix buys your film, maybe Amazon buys your film. There are these big streaming platforms that, especially as of recently, when mainstream became a big deal, They started investing in shorter film, smaller formats, and they buy it if they like the project and the project is well done and well directed, well shot, well edited, with good quality. I don't see anything difficult really with you selling it.
But what are the odds that a filmmaker like you can make it, have your movie screened in like Vox and Novo and all this? What is the probability of that?
You cannot really put a probability on it. You just have to do it.
Okay.
Do it the best you can.
And hope for the best.
And hope for the best, really. You never know where these things come. In the end of the day, okay, you may create a film and you know that you would take it. It would be a film festival exclusively. So you only take it to film festivals. That's your vision. But that's as far as you can think. You post it, or you put it, or you submit it, and it takes care of itself, really. I do believe that in the end of the day, the filmmaker's job ends when the film is done, when the editing is done, when the credits are done, when everything is done. And when it comes to distribution, you just let the film walk, because you took care of the infant, the infant. You took care of him, you cared for him, you fed him, so on and so forth. And then it's up to him now to take its own form. Many films were shot and they didn't do very well in the beginning, and then they turned into cult classics. You know what I mean? So it really depends. From there, it's really difficult for a filmmaker to know what will happen to the film, or who will buy it, or where it will go. But you could definitely have an idea. So what are the odds? No idea. It depends. It really depends where you are and what you do. And in Dubai, for example, the filmmaking scene is quite limited at this particular moment. So there are not a lot of people doing it. So your chances of getting your film shot and done and distributed are actually higher, because there are not a lot of people in the market. So yeah.
All right. And one last question about this topic is that you mentioned investors, right?
Yes.
These people are willing to put money behind your creative vision.
Yes.
But from a finance background, I'm thinking, hey, if somebody's giving you money, what is the return they are going to get? In this equation of films that are being run at like film festivals or limited screenings, what is the return for the investor? How does an investor justify giving you the money more than just a vision?
Well, it depends what the investor is looking for. If he is looking for a return on his investments, then he would not be dealing with someone like me. He would be dealing with a studio, and the studio would ensure that there's a good director, there's a good actor. If the budget depends, of course, on the budget, and probably it will go towards the cinema route. But in my case, as more of an independent filmmaker, so usually the investors that you find are either investors that are looking to expand their portfolio in terms of investments, or you could find an investor that is looking for a return on his profit, but then even the amount in of itself is quite limited. Like he would not invest $1 million into a short film.
Okay.
It's very well used in a feature film. You know what I mean? So in the end of the day, yes, maybe and for in my case, we always go for the top spots in film festivals, because a lot of the time it's money prizes, 10,000 euros or 10,000 pounds for the top spots, or maybe a camera, or I don't know. So I think that's where the aim is at. You know what I mean? But that's if you're looking to get something back for you. But most of the time, for small-time investors, especially film executive producers, they would start with these short films to test out the market, test where the money goes and what happens, and they follow it around, kind of. It's just more of a dappling thing. I wouldn't say it's a field. I wouldn't say so at all. It's a risk, both for the investor and the filmmaker. Okay. So yeah, it depends.
And you just told me you're making a couple of short films in this beautiful location. What is the process behind it, right? Like, what are your things that you have to do before you even approach an investor? Because when I think about a business, we need a business plan, a deck, and so on and so forth. But from a filmmaker pitching a film, what are the things that you need to pitch your movie to an investor?
Believe it or not, it's more or less the same.
Okay.
More or less. You create a pitch for it with the story. You have a script ready. You have your budget broken down. And you go and you try to convince people to pay money to bring your vision to life, basically. It's basically the same. You're trying to sell your idea for them to invest, for you to execute the film, so that you could benefit that you made a film, and they can benefit that they have a good film in their portfolio. See? So this is how it happens, but it's more or less almost like a business. It is a business, actually.
Before we wrap things out, this is such a beautiful location, right? I've seen it a couple of days ago. I've seen it today. Every single time it amazes me. Tell us a little bit about this place, where we are, and how long you've been in this place. What is it like?
So in Dubai, we are in Al Seef, in a particular location called Al Fahidi. This is my mother's art institution. It's called Al Fahidi Art and Culture Center, where she teaches art. This is actually the work of her students. This is student work. You see, so here she teaches art, different types of art, oil painting, watercoloring, a bit of porcelain and sculpting. So it's more of something to the community, because in the end of the day, when you reach a certain level as an artist, you really love the work, you really love the art, you really love the process, that you'd like everybody else to do it, right? So that's exactly what my mother wanted, for her for this place to be a hub, an institution for people who are interested in creating art, people who are willing to explore. We have many different curriculums and simple ways that someone can easily approach it. For example, I believe the artist behind this painting never had any experience with art. And they were able to do that, I think, in the first...
From scratch.
From scratch. From scratch. So you learn the basics, and then you move to a bit more... you go through the fundamentals, and then you make your way up there. It depends how much you enjoy the process. And if you enjoy the process, then you'd want to know more. So, of course, as a consequence, the quality of your work will constantly upgrade.
And an important factor is that out of all the locations in Dubai, you chose Al Fahidi.
Yes.
Right? Why is this building special? Tell us a little bit about this.
So back in the days, as far as I know, these used to be the houses of Emaratis back in the days. And then it turned into a touristic area. And then they wanted to use the houses as to provide different types of services for tourists. The place is quite old. These places are quite old, 70, 80, maybe 100 years old, depending. And it has a lot of this cultural significance, because like I think I remember once came in the grandson or the grandson of the person who used to live here, and he walked around and he was like, yeah, I remember my father showing me this place, and this used to be a house, and there used to be a carpet over there, and my mother used to cook here. And so you could definitely, for Emiratis, it holds a huge cultural significance. And now, currently, they're trying to use it for other people to explore that, to learn a bit more about the place, to discover new things. It's awesome.
It's a beautiful story behind it. Thank you so much for this interview. It's a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you.
Look.